Okay, well, let's talk about that. One of the things that, I'll kind of,
So,
there are a lot of situations.
Randall, you're Randall Davis, and what are you talking on? Just
I'm
Google
talking
Voice,
about
right?
the use of Google Voice in language assessment.
Okay. Go.
All right. One of the biggest challenges, whether you're using Google Voice or any other technology, is the ability to see and help students measure their progress. Here at the universities, I work at an IEP in the university, and often there are teachers that just can't understand their students. Students study in our program and then move on to the university, and they're wondering, I just can't figure out why students can't understand. What are you trying to do to help the students better? And so one of the things that often as teachers and as students, if you look at this picture right here, what colors do you see? You think you see blue and green, but if you look a little bit careful, it's actually green only. And the reason why I show this type of picture is that often with students often can't see the problems that they have. Teachers often can't see the problems that their own students have. So one of the things that I try to think of, can we devise ways of helping students improve their listening skills in pedagogically sound ways? That's kind of the thing. Well, whatever technology you're using, often you want to think about, well, we have the technology, and that's usually not the problem. It's usually the biggest problem is blending technology and pedagogy, and what is the rationale behind it. So any presentation you might be seeing at TESOL or whatever, that's the real focus. I started, first time I presented actually in the Electronic Village was 20 years ago, and people are talking about technology revolutionizing everything, but really we have to be looking at the other elements as well. So one of the things that I often find is that technology in many ways has provided us a means of going backwards. We're always thinking that technology is helping us go forward, but we have to be thinking about that. And the other thing is, just because we can do it with technology doesn't necessarily mean it should be done. And I think that's a real key thing that we should be looking at. So when we think about assessments, whether it be Google Voice or any other technologies, number one, the biggest challenge, and if I look in Japan, how many students do you have in a class?
And on the back of this handout, I have
30 to 40.
30, 40. How many classes does a teacher have?
10, 12 a week maybe.
Yeah, so we're talking a lot. So we're talking, you can be talking about whether it be Google Voice or whatever. It's just really challenging. So what is an efficient means of actually recording students? That's why at the end of the presentation I was talking about scales. Because if you said, okay, I have all of these students, and the only time I have is to be able to assess a student saying, please tell me one thing that you did yesterday in your free time. Maybe with 30 students I could do that, and record them and assess them, but it's just a time factor. The other thing is finding ways of providing meaningful feedback, and I know when I had these big scales, it was just so difficult because they weren't as meaningful to students. And then of defining what do I want to evaluate? Am I evaluating, the grammatical competencies? Am I going to be body language, whatever it might be? So the technical aspects, these are some of the services. There's so many of them. Whether you're using Google Voice or Clip or VoiceThread or Canvas, or maybe your university has some type of system, you want to be aware of it. Okay? So there are many types of services that are available online. And Google Voice, and I'm really hoping that with Google Voice, it was started in 2019. Just in January of this year, they made some additional changes to it. In the future, they might provide that worldwide. But Google Voice is basically designed so that people who had a cell phone, who had a home phone, who had a work phone, will give you a free number so that you don't, even if these phone numbers change in the future, your Google Voice won't. And so when people call this one number, it has the ability of ringing any one of these devices. So you don't have to give out 3 different phone numbers. But the biggest thing for teachers was a voice mailbox. Now, long ago, I thought, well, I'll just give my students my cell phone number. When they call, it goes to my voicemail. But that could fill up very, very quickly. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that at all. So with Google Voice basically has the ability of giving the students your Google Voice number. Here's my Google Voice number. It's not my real phone number. So when students call that, it says, "Hi, this is Randall. Please say your name and leave your message." Now, if I have 3 different classes, okay, this class is calling in, and I gave them the the topic for today. And in this other class, it was a different topic, and in this class, it was a different topic. Yes, Google Voice has the ability to put into groups. This class, I'm going to put them into one group, and in this class, another group, by their cell phone numbers. I just found that was just too hard. I'm busy. I'm busy, and I just give it in class. Again, when they call the phone number, it just says, leave your message. But I already gave them the voicemail topic in the class. It does have the ability for you to customize the greetings. So when students from this class with these phone numbers call, Google Voice, you can personalize. You can actually personalize a greeting, right? Depending on your class. This was my modals class. They had something. This was a topic on geography. So infinitives. So you can create a voice greeting for each of your classes, but you don't have to. And I just kind of try to make it simple. Let me go back here for a minute. Again, how does it benefit teachers? Teachers can give their students their number, and they can record up to 3 minutes. And usually 3 minutes, if you have that many students, a lot of times I just want students to record for 1 minute or maybe 30 seconds or something like that. And yes, we have this high-tech lab, but a lot of times the things that I find, it's very difficult for teachers to go down and use the lab because they don't know how to use it and so forth. That's why Google Voice is very simple. So again, I mentioned about sending up contacts. It can handle multiple calls at one time. So again, there's not going to be any busy signal. So when they call, you've got 30 students calling at the same time. They don't record any type of busy signal. They do provide conference calling and recording. I've never used those features, but they offer that as an option. The other options is that when students call, I have it set up so it goes into my voicemail account automatically, and it will provide a transcription, but I'm not interested in the transcription. But it does allow you to download the audio recording, to actually email the recording back to the students if you want to do that. That's a feature.
So the transcription that appeared like this before, that's automatically generated?
It's automatically transcribed. Yeah, I'm not worried about that because the transcription is not always very good. Okay, but it has that option to do that as well. Of course, the clearer the phone that you use, the better transcription that it is.
That could also be something you could use to highlight where students maybe are having pronunciation problems or something that aren't getting picked up.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many things. And when you email it back to students, you can actually type in a comment or whatever they have. Yeah.
So could students be calling you from anywhere in the world, really? No.
With Google Voice, it's U.S.-based only. And so that's why I say, well, okay, Randall, U.S.-based, how does it apply to me? That's where I might recommend like Clip or VoiceThread or Canvas or any other system, management system that you might have at your own university. So even though I'm talking about Google Voice, people might say, well, you know what? We do have this type of system or phone service in our country or at our university. And so no matter what you're using, that's what led me into the pedagogical things. And I think you were joining me at that point.
At the end of it.
At that point. So basically, when I think about pedagogical, you have to think about whether you use Google Voice or use any other service, what am I going to evaluate? And the biggest challenge I found is, my dad will remind my kids today, was my dad ever a problem? You might want to edit this part. No. But did my dad ever cause a problem at school to any of the teachers? And my dad said there was one time with a Spanish teacher. And the situation was where I was giving a dialogue. My friend and I were doing a dialogue, and at the end of the dialogue, I got a 7, he got an 8 out of 10. And I asked the teacher, well, why? And the teacher said, I said, what is the difference between a 7 and an 8? And the teacher said, now I caught the teacher. I didn't know the idea of competencies, of rubrics, but the teacher said, Randall, I've been doing this for many, many years, and there is a difference. And I said, well, what is the difference? And I started pressing. And the teacher said, well, if you don't stop, I might contact your parents because you're being I was asking a real question. And the real question is that sometimes keep idea that if you come up with a scale of evaluating students' speaking skills, what is the difference between a 5 and a 6, a 7 and a 9? Really, there is no difference unless you have a real system that students can understand clearly. So as I think about this, imagine for a minute, okay, right here, my topic is, tell me 3 things that you did last week to improve your speaking skills. Again, whether I'm using Google Voice or any other system, I have basically, you got it right or you didn't. In other words, if a student says, I eat it, well, that's a 0. It's not a 2 or a 5, it's a 0. Idea, it wasn't clear. Now these are for 3 ideas, but I'm just saying I'm looking at one simple one. The student says, I eat it. Well, you eat it what? It's not clear, so you got a 0. Time expression, I told him you needed to use a time expression. So if a student says, yesterday I ate a sandwich with my friends, you got a 1 for grammar, a 1 for idea, a 1 for the time expression. And if I'm looking for something specific, for example, irregular past tense verbs, or yesterday I worked instead of I worked. So I try to keep it very, very simple so that it's right or it's wrong. So students know when they got a 0 the grammar, it's because they didn't use the correct grammar tense. So once I started doing this with my students could see clearly. I know why I got a 3 out of a 3 or a 2 out of a 3 and so forth. So as I talk about these concepts a little bit, the last thing was a little bit about designing the classroom, and I talked a little bit about that. Is that when you do any types of recording, anytime, and you saw this, anytime you do any type of recording, you want to make, whether it's with Google Voice, whether it's in a computer lab, whether it's with a cell phone, setting up the classroom is so important, because in the past what I would do, again, no matter what type of recordings you do, I had students in a semicircle, and they were all looking at each other. And the challenge is if students are doing a recording and they see that other students are ending quickly, they'll stop quickly, right? There's pressure. So what I started doing with recordings, I would give students my Google Voice number, or if you're using any other service, and they would turn and face the wall. So at the beginning of the recordings in the class, everyone in the class is facing the wall, so they can't see each other. Then I say, hi everyone, okay, here is the task. Tell me 3 things that you did yesterday with your family. They call the Google Voice number. Then when they start recording, they can't see each other. They're only hearing the voices. So yeah, they can hear the voices are ending, their friends, because if we extend the room around, students are recording all around this room. So you only see these 3 right here. But as they start recording, they don't see each other. But they hear each other, but they don't see it. And by arranging the room this way, it cuts down on the pressure of ending early. And so I know that students have just recorded a little bit longer.
Thanks, Randall. Appreciate that. Just a smooth out throw here. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us.